For 10 months, a mother received messages from her daughter, photos, emojis, reassurances, but behind each message was a lie. Her daughter was already gone, her body hidden in a toolbox on a balcony in Brisbane. This is the chilling story of deception, betrayal, and a mother's worst nightmare. She was 29 years old, full of dreams and determination. Qiong Yan had left her home in China to build a new life in Brisbane, Australia. As a Chinese national, she was known for her dedication and ambition, working as the director of a migration agency. Her days were filled with helping others navigate the complexities of relocation, a testament to her commitment and compassion. In September 2020, Qiong's regular updates to her mother ceased. The daily messages, once filled with warmth and routine, became sporadic and impersonal. Concern grew, but the reassurances continued. "I'm fine, just busy," the messages claimed. Yet behind these words was a chilling silence. Unbeknownst to her family, Qiong had been killed by her flatmate, Zhao, who then concealed her body in a toolbox on their apartment's balcony. For 10 months, he maintained the facade, sending over 2,500 messages to her mother, extracting approximately $463,000 under false pretenses. The vibrant life Qiong had built was extinguished, replaced by a web of deceit and greed. Qiong Yan's story is a poignant reminder of the vulnerabilities faced by those seeking new beginnings. Her legacy is not just in the tragedy of her untimely death, but in the strength and resilience she exhibited in life. Zhao was 30 years old, a Chinese national living in Brisbane. To outsiders, he appeared ordinary, a man sharing an apartment with his flatmate, Qiong Yan. He had no prior criminal record and was known to be calm and composed. But beneath this facade lay a disturbing reality. Zhao was obsessed with money. He had significant gambling debts and no stable employment. Prosecutors described him as a high-stakes gambler who had lost substantial sums, leading to financial desperation. This obsession drove him to commit a heinous act. In September 2020, Zhao murdered Qiong Yan, striking her with a gas canister and strangling her. He then concealed her body in a toolbox on their apartment balcony. For the next 10 months, he impersonated her, sending over 2,500 messages to her mother in China, deceiving her into transferring more than $500,000 under false pretenses. Zhao's actions were calculated and devoid of remorse. He transferred Yan's Porsche into his name and moved over $600,000 from her and her mother's accounts. His motive was clear: greed. As Justice Martin Burns stated during sentencing, Zhao acted with naked greed and showed a callous disregard for the life he took. Zhao's ordinary appearance masked a manipulative and remorseless individual whose actions led to unimaginable pain for Qiong Yan's family. In September 2020, Qiong Yan's regular updates to her mother ceased. The daily messages, once filled with warmth and routine, became sporadic and impersonal. Concern grew, but the reassurances continued. "I'm fine, just busy," the messages claimed. Yet behind these words was a chilling silence. Unbeknownst to her family, Qiong had been killed by her flatmate, Zhao, who then concealed her body in a toolbox on their apartment's balcony. For 10 months, he maintained the facade, sending over 2,500 messages to her mother, extracting approximately $463,000 under false pretenses. The vibrant life Qiong had built was extinguished, replaced by a web of deceit and greed. Qiong Yan's story is a poignant reminder of the vulnerabilities faced by those seeking new beginnings. Her legacy is not just in the tragedy of her untimely death, but in the strength and resilience she exhibited in life. For 10 months, Qiong Yan's mother received daily messages from her daughter. Emojis, reassurances, even photos of her beloved cat. But behind each message was a lie. Her daughter was already gone, her body hidden in a toolbox on a Brisbane balcony. Yang Zhao, Qiong's flatmate, had taken over her digital life. Using her phone, he sent over 2,500 messages to her mother, maintaining the illusion that Qiong was alive and well. He crafted stories of busyness, poor internet connections, and even sent videos to keep the deception alive. One such video showed a woman's hand petting a cat, accompanied by the message, "I am fine. I have my cat keeping me company." But the hand wasn't Qiong's and the voice wasn't hers. It was all part of Zhao's elaborate ruse to exploit her mother's trust. Through these messages, Zhao manipulated Qiong's mother into transferring over $463,000, funds he used to fuel his gambling habits and lavish lifestyle. He even transferred Qiong's Porsche into his name, all while maintaining the facade of her continued existence. This digital deception not only prolonged the discovery of Qiong's fate, but also inflicted immeasurable emotional trauma on her family, who believed she was alive and thriving in Australia. In the days following Qiong Yan's disappearance, her mother, Yan, began receiving messages from her daughter's WeChat account. The messages were filled with reassurances. "I'm fine, just busy with work, no need to worry." But behind these comforting words was a sinister deception. Unbeknownst to Rongmei, her daughter's flatmate, Yang Zhao, had taken over Qiong's digital identity. Over the next 10 months, Zhao sent more than 2,500 messages to Rongmei, meticulously crafting a facade to convince her that Qiong was alive and well. He even sent a video showing a woman's hand petting a cat, accompanied by the message, "I am fine. I have my cat keeping me company." The hand wasn't Qiong's, and the voice wasn't hers. It was all part of Zhao's elaborate ruse. But Zhao's deception wasn't limited to emotional manipulation. He exploited Rongmei's trust to extract significant sums of money. Claiming that Qiong needed funds for various reasons, Zhao convinced Rongmei to transfer over $463,000 odd. He used these funds to fuel his gambling habits and lavish lifestyle, even transferring Qiong's Porsche into his name. This calculated exploitation of a mother's love and trust highlights the depths of Zhao's manipulation. For 10 months, Rongmei believed she was supporting her daughter, unaware that she was being deceived by the very person responsible for her daughter's disappearance. For 10 months, a secret lay hidden in plain sight on a Brisbane balcony. Behind the sliding glass doors of a Hamilton apartment, a large toolbox sat undisturbed, its presence unremarkable to neighbors and passers-by. But within that box was a grim secret, the body of Qiong Yan, concealed by her flatmate, Yang Zhao. After murdering Qiong in September 2020, Zhao purchased a dual toolbox from a local hardware store. He placed her body inside, sealed it, and left it on their shared balcony. To mask any odors, he reportedly told neighbors that the smell was due to garbage or other innocuous reasons. In a disturbing twist, Zhao placed prayer bags on the toolbox. When questioned, he claimed it was out of respect for Qiong's beliefs, though prosecutors suggested it was an attempt to prevent her spirit from haunting him. Throughout this period, Zhao continued to live in the apartment, maintaining the facade of normalcy. He sent messages from Qiong's phone, interacted with her contacts, and even managed her finances, all while her body remained just outside. The chilling reality of this deception came to light only in July 2021 when police, acting on a missing person report, discovered the toolbox and its contents. The discovery shocked the community and unveiled the depths of Zhao's calculated actions. As months passed, the messages from Qiong Yan's WeChat account to her mother continued, but their tone began to shift. The once warm and detailed conversations became curt and impersonal. Yan grew increasingly concerned, noting that her daughter's responses lacked the familiarity and affection they once held. Karen's post. Attempts to initiate video calls were consistently met with excuses: poor internet connection, being too busy, or feeling unwell. Despite these justifications, Rong Mei's unease grew. She sensed something was amiss but couldn't pinpoint what. In April 2021, Rong Mei's suspicions intensified. She reached out to Qiong's friends and acquaintances in Brisbane, only to discover that none had seen or heard from her in months. Alarmed, she reported her daughter missing to the authorities. The police launched an investigation attempting to trace Qiong's whereabouts. Their inquiries led them to the Hamilton apartment she shared with young Zhao. Upon arrival, Zhao appeared cooperative, allowing officers into the residence. However, inconsistencies in his statements and a peculiar odor emanating from the balcony raised red flags. Further probing led officers to a large toolbox on the balcony. Upon opening it, they made a grim discovery: the decomposed body of Qiong Yan, concealed for nearly 10 months. The facade Zhao had meticulously maintained unraveled in an instant, revealing a chilling tale of deception and betrayal. In April 2021, Qiong Yan's mother, Rong Mei, reported her daughter missing to Australian authorities. Concerned by the lack of direct contact and the increasingly impersonal messages she had been receiving, Rong Mei's report prompted a police investigation. Detectives visited the Hamilton apartment that Qiong shared with young Zhao. Zhao appeared cooperative, allowing officers into the residence. However, inconsistencies in his statements and a peculiar odor emanating from the balcony raised suspicions. Further probing led officers to a large toolbox on the balcony. Upon opening it, they made a grim discovery: the decomposed body of Qiong Yan, concealed for nearly 10 months. The facade Zhao had meticulously maintained unraveled in an instant, revealing a chilling tale of deception and betrayal. During his arrest, Zhao made a chilling admission to police, stating, "Accident doesn't matter, I killed someone," highlighting his lack of remorse. He also confessed to transferring Qiong's Porsche into his name and moving over $200,000 from her accounts. Zhao's actions were driven by greed, and he showed no remorse during the trial. On July 19, 2021, detectives entered the Hamilton apartment shared by young Zhao and Qiong Yan. As they stepped onto the balcony, a large toolbox caught their attention. Detective Sergeant Tammy Story noticed small prayer bags attached to its locks, a detail that seemed out of place. Upon opening the toolbox, a pungent odor filled the air. Inside, they discovered the decomposed body of Qiong Yan, concealed for nearly 10 months. The apartment was immediately declared a crime scene. Simultaneously, in Sydney, New South Wales detectives were interviewing Zhao. Unaware of the discovery, he maintained his innocence. That changed when officers informed him of the find. Body-worn camera footage captured the moment Zhao was told about the discovery. His response was chilling: "Accident doesn't matter, I killed someone." He then asked, "Was I convincing in pretending to be her online?" This moment marked the unraveling of Zhao's elaborate deception, revealing the extent of his calculated actions over the past 10 months. In May 2025, the Brisbane Supreme Court became the stage for a harrowing trial that exposed the full scale of young Zhao's deception and cruelty. Zhao, then 30 years old, was charged with the 2020 murder of his flatmate, 29-year-old Qiong Yan. The prosecution argued that Zhao killed Yan with a gas canister and strangled her, all in a calculated attempt to access over $500,000 from her and her mother's bank accounts. During the 2-week trial, jurors heard how Zhao had stored Yan's body in a large toolbox on the balcony of their shared apartment. For the next 10 months, he maintained an elaborate charade, sending over 2,500 texts and voice messages to her mother to convince her Qiong was still alive. The court was told Zhao even used videos, photos of a cat, and affectionate language to sustain the illusion. Zhao's defense claimed the death had been accidental, suggesting nitrous oxide inhalation played a role. But the jury was unconvinced. After less than 2 hours of deliberation, they returned a unanimous verdict: guilty of murder and of interfering with a corpse. Justice Martin Burns condemned Zhao's actions, describing them as driven by naked greed and executed with a callous disregard for human life. He sentenced Zhao to life in prison with a minimum of 22 years before parole eligibility. In a powerful victim impact statement, Qiong Yan's mother, Rongmei, addressed the court in tears. She said, "I still cannot accept the fact that my daughter is gone. I'm still full of anger and hatred." Her grief hung heavy in the courtroom, but with the guilty verdict, she finally received what she had been seeking for over 4 years: the truth and justice. Behind the facade of digital messages and emotional manipulation, young Zhao was orchestrating a calculated financial scheme. His motive wasn't impulsive rage, it was greed, pure and methodical. In the weeks following Qiong Yan's disappearance, Zhao didn't just take control of her phone. He took over her entire digital identity. He accessed her bank accounts, monitored her emails, and fabricated a believable online presence. To the outside world, Qiong seemed alive, active, just busy. But Zhao was the one behind every transaction, every request, every word. He used her WeChat account to extract money from her mother, telling elaborate stories about financial troubles, urgent expenses, and investment opportunities. In total, he siphoned off over 463,000 Australian dollars, the equivalent of more than 300,000 US dollars under false pretenses. But he didn't stop there. Zhao forged documents to transfer Qiong's Porsche into his name. He used her funds to gamble, invest in cryptocurrency, and fund a lifestyle he couldn't afford on his own. The court later revealed that Zhao moved over $600,000 in total between accounts linked to Qiong and her mother. Investigators found traces of a well-planned paper trail, fake receipts, bank transfers, and messages laced with urgency. Zhao had studied Qiong's language patterns, mimicked her use of emojis, and even used voice filters to imitate her tone when sending audio messages. It wasn't a sloppy scam. It was a long con, cruel, deliberate, and emotionally devastating. This wasn't just about theft. It was a psychological violation. Zhao exploited not just trust, but a mother's love, knowing full well it would blind her to the truth. For nearly a year, he used Qiong's memory to drain her family of their savings, their hope, and their peace. For 10 months, Rongmei Yan lived in a digital illusion. Every day, her phone would light up with messages from her daughter Qiong. There were updates about work, affectionate emojis, even photos of Qiong's beloved cat. Sometimes there were voice messages too. Slightly off, maybe, but nothing that screamed alarm. And what mother wants to believe the worst? Rongmei was thousands of kilometers away in China. Her daughter had moved to Brisbane to build a better life, and communication was often virtual. So when Qiong stopped taking video calls, it was easy to accept the explanations. Busy with work. Wi-Fi is bad. Too tired. Little lies, believable lies that masked an unthinkable truth. But slowly, cracks began to show. The messages started sounding strange, colder, less personal. When Rongmei asked about specific things, mutual friends, family events, childhood memories, the responses grew vague. Qiong wasn't just distant. She didn't sound like herself anymore. Still, the idea that something could be wrong seemed impossible. Her daughter was still messaging. She was still alive, wasn't she? And then came the requests for money, large transfers, emergency situations. Zhao pretending to be Qiong was convincing. He used pet names, family references, warm language. He reassured her constantly. "I love you, Mom. Don't worry." But behind every sweet word was the man who had taken Qiong's life. When the truth was finally revealed that Qiong had been dead for nearly a year, her body hidden in a toolbox on her own balcony, Rong Mei's world collapsed. She had been texting a ghost. Worse, she had been manipulated by the very person responsible for her daughter's death. In court, Rong Mei faced her daughter's killer and delivered a heartbreakingly raw victim impact statement. She said she had been living in a constant nightmare and that the guilt and grief were unbearable. She couldn't sleep, she couldn't eat, and she could never forgive the man who not only ended her daughter's life, but made her believe she hadn't. This wasn't just a murder, it was a prolonged, intimate betrayal, one that tore a mother's heart apart, message by message. Yang Zhao didn't just steal a life, he drained it dry financially, emotionally, and digitally. The $463,000 he swindled from Qiong Yan's mother wasn't hidden away or used to cover debts quietly. It was blown, lavishly, carelessly, with the arrogance of someone who believed he was untouchable. Court records revealed that Zhao used the stolen funds to support a lifestyle he could never afford on his own. He poured tens of thousands into gambling, both online and in person, chasing luck on betting apps and in casino accounts. He invested large sums into cryptocurrency platforms, hoping for fast returns, and he spent freely on luxury goods, subscriptions, and personal indulgences. He also went to extraordinary lengths to legitimize the theft. Zhao forged property documents. He transferred Qiong's Porsche Macan into his own name. He even created false email trails to justify the fund transfers. At one point, he claimed to be acting as Qiong's power of attorney, forging paperwork to continue accessing her accounts long after she was gone. When police seized his devices, they found meticulous records of every financial transaction, every dollar moved, every fake receipt crafted to maintain the illusion. Zhao didn't panic and spend recklessly in the heat of a crime. He plotted, tracked, and executed a months-long heist hidden beneath a murder. He saw her mother as a mark, a bank account, nothing more. And he never once expressed remorse. Not for the killing, not for the lies, not for the money. In fact, during his interviews with police, Zhao showed flashes of pride, asking whether investigators thought he'd done a good job pretending to be Qiong. It wasn't just about getting rich, it was about control, about power. This wasn't a moment of desperation. It was a cold business plan written in blood and bank codes. Zhao lived off the stolen life of his victim, and for nearly a year, he got away with it. In April 2025, the trial of Yang Zhao commenced in the Brisbane Supreme Court, drawing national attention across Australia and international interest from China, where Qiong Yan's family still lived. What unfolded in that courtroom wasn't just the prosecution of a killer, it was the dissection of a lie that had lived and breathed for 10 months. Zhao pleaded not guilty to murder, but admitted to interfering with a corpse. His defense claimed the death was accidental, suggesting Qiong had died after inhaling nitrous oxide and hitting her head. Zhao's legal team insisted he panicked and tried to cover it up out of fear. But prosecutors painted a very different picture, one of premeditation, calculated fraud, and a killer who showed no remorse. They argued Zhao's real motive was greed. He didn't just cover up Qiong's death, he impersonated her with stunning precision, robbing her mother of over $460,000 in the process. The court heard how Zhao had purchased a large toolbox days before Qiong's death, kept her body sealed inside it for nearly a year, sent more than 2,500 messages to her mother, even voice notes, forged documents to claim her car and bank assets, lived in the same apartment with the body steps away, as if nothing had happened. Testimony from Detective Sergeant Tammy Story detailed the moment police opened the box. Forensic experts testified that Qiong's body showed signs of blunt force trauma and that Zhao's version of events didn't match the physical evidence. Zhao watched much of the trial in silence, sometimes shaking his head or scribbling notes. But not once did he apologize. Not to Qiong's mother, not to the court, not even in his final statement. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. On May 1st, 2025, they returned a unanimous verdict: guilty of murder and guilty of interfering with a corpse. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read. Zhao showed no emotion, but across the room, Qiong's mother, Yan, clutched her chest and wept. It wasn't closure, but it was a step toward justice. The trial of Yang Zhao was filled with moments that gripped not only those inside the courtroom, but a global audience following every update. Beneath the legal arguments and forensic details, this was a story of cruelty, impersonation, and the unbearable grief of a mother. From the beginning, Zhao's demeanor was cold. He sat calmly through witness testimonies, including forensic experts who detailed the condition in which Qiong Yan's body was found. He showed little reaction when photographs were shown or when his own messages were read aloud. But perhaps the most haunting moment came when police bodycam footage was played for the jury. In that footage, Zhao, confronted with the discovery of Qiong's body, didn't deny what he'd done. Instead, he calmly said, "Accident doesn't matter, I killed someone." And then, almost disturbingly detached, he asked police, "Was I convincing in pretending to be her online?" The room reportedly fell silent at that remark. Prosecutors highlighted it as a window into Zhao's mindset, not just his guilt, but his complete lack of remorse. He wasn't panicking, he was curious, as if impersonating Qiong for 10 months was a performance he wanted graded. Another emotional peak came during the victim impact statement from Yan. Through a translator, she addressed Zhao directly. "You not only took my daughter's life, you used her name, her face, her words. You made me believe she was alive. For 10 months, I spoke to a monster pretending to be my child." Her voice broke several times. The courtroom stood still, many with tears in their eyes. Even seasoned legal reporters described the atmosphere as one of the most emotionally intense they had ever seen. Justice Martin Burns, delivering the sentence, was equally direct. "You acted with the cold precision of someone chasing money, not haunted by conscience. Your actions were despicable. You violated the trust of a family who loved their daughter, and you did so for nothing more than your own greed." The sentence was final: life in prison with a minimum of 22 years before parole eligibility. But for many, it wasn't just the crime Zhao committed that stood out, it was the way he lived with it. Cold, methodical, unmoved, and that made it even more terrifying. Australia has seen its share of tragic crimes, but the case of Qiong Yan struck a different, deeper chord. It wasn't just the act of violence that horrified the public, it was the chilling intelligence behind the deception and the realization of how far someone could go to fake an entire life. This wasn't a story of someone fleeing the scene or hiding in the shadows. Yang Zhao stayed exactly where the crime occurred, in the same apartment, on the same balcony, just feet away from the sealed toolbox containing Qiong's body. For 10 months, he lived side by side with what he had done. And during that time, he built a second identity. He didn't just impersonate Qiong casually. He studied her language, her rhythm of texting, her emojis. He responded to her mother at all hours of the day, maintained long conversations, and even sent photos and videos to maintain the illusion. The level of manipulation was so precise, many observers called it a psychological performance, not just a crime. For the Chinese community in Brisbane and internationally, the case was even more jarring. Qiong Yan was a successful professional, an immigrant navigating life in a new country with dreams and ambitions. Her death raised concerns about the vulnerability of international students and workers living in shared accommodations far from home. The case also sparked widespread conversation about digital impersonation and how easily someone's digital footprint can be hijacked. Zhao used nothing but a phone, a few photos, and emotional manipulation to convince a grieving mother her daughter was alive. That fact alone terrified millions. What made the case so deeply unsettling was the length of the con, not hours, not days, but nearly a year. A murder followed by 10 months of calculated lies, all carried out in the comfort of the home he once shared with the woman he killed. This wasn't a heat of the moment crime. It was a chilling reminder that the most dangerous people don't always run. Some stay exactly where they are and pretend nothing ever happened. What kind of person not only takes a life, but assumes that life, message by message, day after day, for nearly a year? Yang Zhao's behavior left both prosecutors and psychologists disturbed. While he was never officially diagnosed with a mental disorder during trial proceedings, his actions revealed several key psychological patterns: cold detachment, obsessive control, and an unnerving emotional void. He was methodical. Zhao didn't act out of visible rage. He didn't flee. He calculated. From the moment he ended Qiong Yan's life, he began planning a digital illusion. He crafted a script one he would follow flawlessly for 304 days. Every message was strategic. Every excuse was rehearsed. He studied Qiong's voice, mannerisms, and even her WeChat emoji habits to fool the one person who knew her best, her mother. This wasn't about covering his tracks. It was about maintaining dominance. Zhao seemed to derive satisfaction from control, not just over Qiong's finances, but over how her mother saw the world, over how long he could keep up the ruse. When police finally arrested him, he asked them, "Was I convincing in pretending to be her?" It wasn't panic. It was pride. Experts have pointed to traits that resemble narcissism and sociopathy: a lack of empathy, grandiose sense of control, manipulative behavior without remorse, an ability to lie calmly, persuasively, and over a long periods. One forensic profiler described Zhao's behavior as the psychological equivalent of identity theft layered over homicide. It wasn't just a crime, it was the reconstruction of reality, built entirely to serve his greed. Even after his arrest, Zhao expressed no visible remorse. He never apologized to Qiong's mother. He never acknowledged the pain he caused. In fact, during trial, he appeared more concerned with how well he had played the role of Qiong than with what he had done to her. That's what unsettled people the most. Not just that he could kill, but that he could live like he hadn't. For 10 months, eating, sleeping, texting, with the knowledge that just meters away on his balcony was the truth in a sealed box. Zhao wasn't just a killer. He was a manipulator, an impersonator, and a man who used grief as a weapon and never blinked. Looking back on the case of Qiong Yan, one of the most haunting questions is, could this tragedy have been prevented? There were no screams, no police reports filed when she disappeared, no friends who immediately raised the alarm. For 10 months, the world believed she was alive because the messages never stopped, and that raises difficult, painful questions about how modern life and digital dependence can mask unspeakable realities. First, there was no official missing person report until nearly a year after her death. Qiong's family lived in China. She lived alone in Australia with only her flatmate, the man who would later kill her. Like many international students and immigrants, her life was remote, virtual, and easy to disappear. Her mother trusted the messages because they came from her daughter's phone. Why wouldn't she? But in hindsight, there were red flags: the shift in tone, the avoidance of video calls, the repeated excuses, the urgency around financial requests, and the growing emotional distance that felt less like stress and more like someone else entirely. This case also exposed a critical vulnerability in the way digital identities are treated. A person can remain alive in the digital world, texting, emailing, posting long after they're physically gone. In a time when messages replace hugs and WeChat replaces phone calls, impersonation becomes dangerously easy. There were also systemic weaknesses. No formal check-ins for independent international residents. No welfare follow-ups when someone disappears from social life but remains digitally active. And no digital verification required for massive international money transfers based only on trust. This isn't about blaming Qiong's mother. She was lied to, manipulated with surgical precision, and emotionally exploited by a man who knew exactly how to push her fears and love into silence. But it is a call to awareness, to check in more deeply, to question when something feels wrong even if the screen says otherwise, and to never underestimate how technology in the wrong hands can be used not to connect us, but to hide the truth. For 10 months, Qiong Yan's life continued in text messages. To her mother, she was alive, typing, smiling, reassuring. Every message felt like hope. Every emoji felt like comfort. But they were all lies, crafted by the man who ended her life. Zhao didn't just kill, he replaced. He became Qiong in pixels and words, keeping her alive just enough to rob her mother of money, trust, and eventually peace. When the truth was finally uncovered, it wasn't just the crime that shocked people, it was how far Zhao went to keep the illusion alive. It was how fragile digital identity really is, and how easy it is, in this age of screens and silence, for someone to vanish without anyone realizing it. This story isn't just about justice, it's about deception, control, and a mother's undying belief that her daughter was still out there somewhere. But the truth had been sealed in a box, right outside the home they once shared. So the next time your phone lights up, ask yourself, who's really on the other end?